It was the kind of darkness you only feel in the woods. No streetlights. No city hum. Just silence, and the wind brushing against the cabin walls like a whisper you can't unhear. I was lying on the couch under a heavy blanket, staring at the ceiling I couldn't even see. The storm had knocked the power out an hour ago, and my phone was long dead. Across the room, I could hear my Uncle Darren breathing. Steady. Calm. We hadn't spoken in almost 10 minutes. Just lay there, separated by air, but somehow closer than ever. Then it happened. I felt it. A hand, warm and careful, slid under the edge of the blanket, and touched mine. Lightly. Gently. Fingers brushing, then folding slowly between mine. I didn't move. I didn't speak. Because deep down, some part of me didn't want to pull away. I closed my eyes and let the moment swallow me whole. And when the lights finally came back on. When the storm passed, and everything returned to normal. He let go. Just like that. But I never forgot what it felt like. To be seen in the dark. What started as a storm outside became the one thing that changed me forever, and it began with his hand in mine. My name's Jake. I was 19 that summer. Quiet. Observant. The kind of guy who didn't say much unless you asked. I kept to myself mostly, not because I didn't have things to say, but because I didn't trust the world to listen. Especially not to someone like me. I'd figured out I was gay around 16. But I never told anyone. Not my parents, not my friends, and definitely not my extended family. Not in a town like ours. Not where men were expected to be hard, loud, and unshakably straight. So I became the best version of invisible I could be. That summer, my parents were heading out for a last-minute anniversary trip, and I didn't want to go. They didn't force me. Instead, they made a call to my mom's younger brother, Darren. Just spend a couple nights with him at the cabin, Mom had said, keys in hand. He's chill. You two will get along fine. I wasn't so sure. Uncle Darren wasn't like the rest of the family. He was different. Late 30s. Rugged. Mysterious. The kind of man who didn't need many words to make an impression. He lived alone, fixed bikes for a living, and had the kind of presence that made rooms quieter when he walked in. When I was a kid, I looked up to him. When I got older, I started looking differently. I hated myself for it. Not because he was my uncle, but because I couldn't stop the feelings. I'd see him once or twice a year, and every time, it was the same, his voice, his laugh, the way he leaned back in chairs like nothing in the world could touch him. There was a gravity to him. And I was always pulled in. But I kept my distance. Always polite. Always guarded. I had to be. I arrived at the cabin on a Friday afternoon. The sky was already darkening with the promise of a storm. Darren greeted me with a nod, holding the screen door open. Jake, he said simply. You got taller. I laughed. You got older. He smirked. Still a smartass, I see. We didn't hug. We weren't that kind of family. The first hour was fine. Small talk. Sandwiches. I sat on the couch while he watched the weather alert scroll across the old TV screen. Storm's gonna get ugly, he muttered. You scared of thunder? No, I lied. He handed me a flashlight. Good. 'Cause the power up here goes out if a squirrel sneezes. We ate dinner. He offered me a beer, I declined. He poured himself whiskey and turned the TV volume down. The house creaked with every gust of wind. Then, the lights blinked. Once. Twice. Gone. Yup, he said. There it goes. And just like that, we were left in the dark. I stood up, trying to play it cool. So what now? He lit a couple candles, their glow flickering off his face. We wait it out, he said. And try not to kill each other in the meantime. We sat at the table. He pulled out a deck of cards. We played quietly, the only sounds the storm outside and the occasional sarcastic comment from him when I lost a hand. It was normal. Calm. Almost easy. Until it wasn't. Until the moment he said, "You've grown into someone different, Jake." I looked up. What do you mean? He shrugged. You're softer. Quieter. Most guys your age are loud and dumb. You think too much. I didn't know how to take that. So I just said, thanks, I guess? He chuckled. It's not a bad thing. It's just rare. I didn't respond. But the way he looked at me after that, long, thoughtful, almost like he was trying to figure something out, it stuck with me. So when we both settled down on the couch under the same blanket, and the house went dead quiet except for the storm outside, it didn't feel like just the weather was changing. He was supposed to be just family. Nothing more. But that night, something shifted in the silence. The wind howled outside the cabin, shaking the windows just enough to make me flinch. The storm had fully arrived, rain hammering the tin roof, thunder rolling over the mountains like a distant drumbeat. Inside, everything was still. The only light came from a single candle flickering on the coffee table. Its reflection shimmered off the glass of the TV screen, casting golden ripples across the dark room. Uncle Darren sat at the other end of the couch, one leg stretched out, the other bent. I sat the opposite way, our legs barely brushing under the blanket we shared for warmth. We hadn't said a word in 15 minutes. But it wasn't awkward. It felt suspended. Like time itself had stopped to watch whatever this was becoming. My mind raced with questions. Was he just being kind? Did he notice how fast my heart was beating? Was I imagining the way he looked at me earlier? I didn't know where to place any of it. Then his voice broke the silence. Low. Steady. Quiet. You scared? I shook my head slowly, even though I kind of was. Not really. Just, can't sleep. Same. Another silence. Then he said, funny how storms bring out the stuff we try to bury. I glanced at him. What do you mean? He shrugged, eyes fixed on the candlelight. We walk around pretending we've got it all together. Until the lights go out, and there's nothing left but truth and silence. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My throat felt tight. Like if I spoke, everything I'd been hiding might pour out. He leaned back against the couch, exhaling deeply. When I was your age, he said softly, I stayed at this cabin with a friend. Another guy. We were stuck here for 2 days because of a flood. I turned toward him, heartbeat rising. We talked about everything that weekend, he continued. Stuff I never thought I'd say out loud. Stuff I never said again. Why not? He looked at me then. Really looked. Because I got scared. Because being honest didn't feel like an option. I felt his words hit me like a quiet explosion. He looked away again. I didn't plan on bringing that up. Something about tonight feels familiar. We sat there for what felt like hours, words unsaid building up between us. And then it happened. His hand, slow and unshaking, moved under the blanket. It brushed against mine. Once. Lightly. Testing. I didn't move. I couldn't move. Then he did it again, this time letting his fingers slide over mine, pause, and gently wrap around. It wasn't forceful. It wasn't sudden. It was like he was offering an answer to a question I hadn't asked out loud. My body froze, but not from fear. It was something else. A strange combination of warmth and vulnerability, nerves and longing. I didn't look at him. I just let my hand stay there. Locked between his fingers. His thumb moved, barely, rubbing the top of my hand in a slow, steady rhythm. He didn't say a word. Neither did I. The candle flickered, casting long shadows across the floor. I closed my eyes. I should have pulled away. That would have been the logical thing. The right thing. The thing I'd been trained my whole life to do. But I didn't. Because somewhere deep down, I didn't want to. There was comfort in the silence. Comfort in the feel of his palm against mine. Not because it was romantic. Not because it was sexual. But because, for the first time in a long time, I felt seen. And maybe, he did too. The storm outside raged louder, but in that moment, it didn't matter. His hand held mine like it had been waiting years to do so. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Eventually, I must have fallen asleep, because the next thing I remember was waking up alone on the couch. The candle had burned out. The power was still gone. The storm had quieted. And he was gone. His spot on the couch was empty. The blanket still held his warmth. For a moment, I wondered if I had dreamt it. If the whole night had been some elaborate fantasy brought on by loneliness and thunder. But then I saw it. On the coffee table, next to the melted candle wax, was a folded note. My name was scribbled on the front in thick handwriting. I opened it with shaky hands. Just 2 lines inside. You didn't imagine it. I just didn't know what to do next. I sat there, holding that note in the dark, my heart pounding louder than the storm ever did, wondering if this was a beginning, or just a beautiful, painful end. I didn't move from the couch that morning. The cabin was still wrapped in that post-storm silence, like even nature didn't know what to say. I stared at the note over and over, reading those 2 lines until I could hear them in his voice. You didn't imagine it. I just didn't know what to do next. I wanted to go to his room, knock on the door, demand more answers, but I didn't. Not because I was afraid of what he'd say. But because I already knew. He was scared. Not of me. But of himself. Of what the world had told him he couldn't be. Of what this moment might awaken if he let it breathe. So I waited. Hours passed before I heard the creak of his door. I didn't turn around, didn't say a word. I just sat on the couch like time had frozen me there. He walked into the kitchen, poured coffee, cleared his throat. Still, I waited. Eventually, he stepped into the living room and stood behind me. "You didn't come knock," he said. I finally turned my head. "You didn't come back." He exhaled. "Fair enough." Another long silence stretched between us before I said, "What do you want from me, Darren?" He looked caught off guard. "I don't know. Because you reached for my hand in the dark like it meant something." "It did." "Then why are we standing here acting like we imagined it?" His jaw clenched. He ran a hand through his messy hair. "I've spent my whole life avoiding that question," he said. "Then maybe it's time you answered it." He looked up at me then, not like an uncle, not like an adult afraid of his truth, but like a man who had finally stopped running. "Sit with me," I said. He did. He sat down right beside me, close enough for our shoulders to touch, and stared straight ahead at the cold fireplace across the room. "I always thought something was wrong with me," he began slowly. "When I was 17, I held a guy's hand at a concert. Just held it. No kiss. Nothing. But I felt more from that moment than I ever did with any girl I dated after." He chuckled bitterly. "My old man found out. Took a belt to me. Told me I'd rot in hell if I ever played that game again. So I didn't. I buried it. Shut it down. Made myself believe it never happened. I stayed quiet, letting him speak. And then you came to the cabin," he continued. "And I saw it. In your eyes. That same storm I used to carry. The way you looked at the world. At me." He turned to face me fully now. "I wasn't trying to lead you on, Jake. I didn't expect to feel it again. Not with you. Not here." I nodded. "You didn't force anything. But you did reach for my hand." He looked down at our hands again. Then, slowly, he reached out. His fingers brushed mine like he was asking for permission, this time in the light. And I gave it. Our hands locked again. But it was different now. Not hidden. Not under the blanket. Not masked by darkness. It was open. Brave. Soft. His eyes glistened. "I haven't done this since that concert." "Then don't let go," I whispered. "I'm not sure what this is yet," he said. "But it's something." "It is." He leaned forward, forehead nearly touching mine. "I thought I was too old to feel this again." "You're not. Too broken. You're not." "I'm scared." "So am I." We sat there, holding hands like we were stitching years of pain and silence into something whole. No one had to speak. The touch said everything. It was understanding. It was apology. It was permission to feel, without punishment. Later that night, we built a fire. He made us grilled cheese like it was the most normal thing in the world. We talked about stupid things, old family vacations, embarrassing stories from when I was a kid, even the time he crashed his dirt bike into a tree at 19. But even as we laughed, our hands kept finding each other. Like magnets. Like memory. Like truth. He played old music on his phone, Fleetwood Mac, Springsteen, Leonard Cohen, and we just listened, occasionally glancing at each other when a lyric hit too close. At one point, he looked at me and said, "I used to imagine moments like this, and then punish myself for wanting them." I reached for his hand again. "Don't punish yourself anymore." He smiled, but I saw the sadness behind it. "I don't know what happens when you leave," he said. "You don't have to know," I replied. "We have now." He nodded. That night, as we lay on opposite sides of the couch again, this time without power outages, without rain, without excuses, I felt his fingers slide across the cushion and find mine. And I let him hold it. Not because I didn't know what it meant, but because I finally did. The first time he held my hand, I stayed silent out of fear. This time, I held his tighter, because I finally understood what it meant to be chosen in the light. The morning after felt normal. Too normal. Like the universe had quietly erased everything from the night before and put the world back where it belonged. Except I couldn't shake what happened. The way he looked at me across the firelight. The way our fingers touched without shame. Darren made breakfast like always, eggs, toast, bacon, black coffee, his routine unshaken. But mine was unraveling. I watched him from the kitchen table, waiting for a glance. A smirk. Anything that acknowledged the shift between us. But it didn't come. He sat across from me, scrolling through his phone like the night before hadn't happened. Like he hadn't held my hand in the dark. Or in the light. Like we hadn't both breathed the same terrified hope into that moment. "You okay?" I asked. Yeah, he replied, too fast. About last night? He froze. Then, carefully, it was, nice. Nice? I repeated, my chest tightening. He looked up, his face unreadable. Jake, you're young. You're still figuring stuff out. Maybe we both got caught in the moment. I stared at him, my hands curling into fists under the table. It wasn't just a moment for me. He exhaled. I know. But that doesn't mean it can be anything more. Why not? He didn't answer. Just picked up his coffee and walked out onto the porch. That day, the distance started. Not physical, we were still in the same space, but emotionally, it felt like he had moved 1,000 miles away. We didn't talk much. He busied himself with chopping wood, cleaning the gutters, fixing a creak in the back door. I tried to help, but he brushed me off with quiet shrugs and one-word answers. By evening, I was exhausted, not from work, but from pretending it didn't hurt. I sat by the fire alone while he sat on the porch steps, smoking a cigarette he hadn't touched in 2 years. When I joined him, he didn't look at me. Just blew smoke into the air like it held answers he couldn't find. I don't regret what happened, I said quietly. He nodded. Neither do I. Then what are we doing? I'm trying to be smart, he said. Trying to protect you. From what? From me. From this. From what people would say if they ever found out. I bit down on the inside of my cheek to keep from crying. You think I care what they say? You should. He finally turned toward me. His eyes looked older than I'd ever seen them. I spent half my life pretending I didn't want things I wanted. You think that just goes away because I held your hand? No, I whispered. But I thought maybe it meant you didn't want to pretend anymore. He looked away. That silence, so full of fear and guilt, hit harder than any word he could have spoken. The next morning, I packed my bag early. My parents were coming to pick me up that afternoon, and suddenly, I couldn't wait to leave. Darren didn't say anything when he saw my duffel at the door. Just nodded like he understood. Like this was what he expected. We shared a tense breakfast. No jokes. No music. No holding hands. Just empty plates and full silence. When the car pulled up, I didn't hug him. Didn't say goodbye. I walked out, climbed into the back seat, and didn't look back. The days that followed were slow and heavy. I kept checking my phone, waiting for a message, a missed call, anything from him. But nothing came. Weeks passed. Then a month. Still silence. I tried to distract myself with school, friends, family dinners. But nothing filled the space he left behind. I didn't know what hurt more, what we shared in the dark, or the way he disappeared in the light. Then one night, I got a call. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, I got a text. It's me. Darren. I don't expect anything. But I needed to say something. Check the voicemail, please. My hands shook as I played the message. His voice came through the speaker, rough, quiet, tired. Jake. I've started and deleted this message 12 times. I know I hurt you. I thought pushing you away would keep you safe, but I think all it did was prove how scared I still am. What I felt that night was real. Every second of it. I don't know what comes next. But I do know. I miss you. And I hope you'll let me figure this out. I'm not running anymore. If you still want to talk. I'm here. I replayed it 3 times. Not because I didn't hear him. But because I wanted to believe he meant every word. Maybe the dark wasn't what changed us, maybe it was the silence that followed, and the choice we had to make, to stay quiet, or finally speak. I listened to his voicemail again the next morning. I didn't text him back. Didn't call either. Not because I was angry. But because I didn't know if I could open that door again without getting hurt all over. But by the 3rd day, something shifted. I was sitting in my car outside a small coffee shop when I opened a blank message and typed 3 words. Are you ready? A minute later, 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then reappeared. Darren. More than I've ever been. We met that weekend. Not at the cabin. Not somewhere dramatic. Just a quiet park outside town. Neutral ground. Empty benches. Wide sky. He wore a gray hoodie and jeans. Looked like he hadn't slept much. I walked up slowly. He stood. Neither of us spoke at first. Then he smiled, not the kind he gave the world, but the one he gave me when no one else was looking. I didn't think you'd come, he said. I almost didn't, I replied. I wouldn't have blamed you. We sat side by side, feet brushing leaves off the concrete beneath us. For a while, we just listened to the wind. I've been scared my whole life, he said finally. Of who I am. Of what people might say. Of losing everything. I nodded. Me too. I thought letting you go would protect us both. But all it did was prove that I'm still living like a ghost. He turned to me, eyes shining. I don't want to be invisible anymore. I looked down at our hands, resting inches apart on the bench. Then stop hiding, I said softly. He reached over, slowly, gently, and took my hand. Right there, in daylight. No storm. No excuses. Just him. Me. And a choice. And this time, he didn't let go. We sat on that bench for hours. And for the first time, it wasn't the dark that made me feel safe. It was him. We stayed on that bench longer than we planned. Maybe it was because neither of us wanted to move, afraid the spell would break. Or maybe it was because for the first time, the silence between us wasn't heavy. It was healing. Our fingers stayed laced together as people walked past. A few glanced, but most didn't notice. Or maybe they didn't care. Either way, neither of us let go. I thought it would feel wrong, Darren said quietly. What? This? Us? Sitting here like this? And does it? I asked, my voice barely above the breeze. He shook his head. It feels like the first real thing I've done in years. I swallowed hard. Then why did you run from it? He looked down at our hands. Because I've never let myself have something I actually wanted. I leaned in a little. Then let yourself have it now. His eyes met mine, and for the first time since that stormy night in the cabin, I saw him fully. Not as my uncle. Not as a scared man. But as someone brave enough to stop pretending. I don't know what this means for us, he said. We don't have to define it yet, I replied. We just have to be honest about what we feel. He smiled. You've always been braver than me. No, I said. I just stopped letting fear win. That evening, we drove to the lake. The same one my family used to visit when I was a kid. It was quiet now, off-season. The parking lot was empty. The sun had just started dipping behind the trees, casting soft orange light over the water. We sat on the hood of his truck, watching the reflection ripple. This is where I kissed someone for the first time, he said suddenly. I turned to him, surprised. It was a guy, he continued. 16. He was 17. We were best friends. We dared each other to do it. Neither of us ever talked about it again. I didn't interrupt. He went on. I spent years convincing myself that night didn't mean anything. That it was just a phase. I even told myself I didn't remember his name. Do you? He nodded slowly. Kyle. I waited. He took a deep breath. That night in the cabin, when I reached for your hand? I wasn't thinking. I wasn't trying to start anything. I wanted to feel something again. You did, I said. So did I. He looked at me, unsure. But do you get what this means? People would freak out if they knew. Let them, I said without hesitation. We're not doing anything wrong. They won't see it that way. That's their problem. He paused, watching the ripples on the water. You're not just some kid I got too close to. You matter to me, Jake. I think about you every day. Even when I tried to push you away. I nodded. I know. He turned fully toward me. When you left the cabin? I hated myself. I hated you too, I said bluntly, and he smiled sadly. I deserve that. I cried every night for a week. I did too. He laughed softly, then went quiet. The kind of quiet that comes before something big. Then he said it. I'm falling for you. My breath caught. I didn't look away. I've never said that to anyone, he added. Not really. Not without a mask on. I reached for his hand. Then take the mask off, and let yourself mean it. I do, he whispered. We sat like that, hearts pounding, hands locked, eyes locked even tighter. Then, slowly, he leaned in. And this time, I didn't hesitate. The kiss wasn't rushed. It didn't feel forbidden or reckless. It felt right. Like coming home. His hand cupped my face. Mine found his chest, where I felt his heart racing. We pulled back slowly, both of us smiling, both of us scared, but finally, completely honest. Later, we sat in the back of the truck bed, wrapped in one blanket. He rested his head on my shoulder. I don't know where this road goes, he said. Neither do I replied. But we're on it together now. He nodded. That's all I've ever wanted. We didn't talk much after that. We just watched the stars show up, one by one, like the universe was slowly revealing its secrets too. And in the quiet, I realized something. We didn't need anyone's permission. We didn't need anyone's understanding. We only needed truth. His. Mine. Ours. That night, under the stars and wrapped in silence, he didn't just hold my hand, He held the part of me I'd been too afraid to share with anyone else, and never once asked me to hide it again. We didn't make any big promises that night. There were no declarations of forever, no illusions about the road ahead. Just two people sitting under the stars, knowing that something between them had shifted permanently, and neither wanted to pretend otherwise anymore. Darren drove me home the next morning. The radio stayed off. The windows down. The wind moved through the silence like a quiet witness to what we now shared. When he dropped me off, he parked a little longer than needed. I could feel him hesitating. "I don't know what to say when people ask about you," he finally admitted. "Not as my nephew. Not just a friend." I looked at him. "Then don't say anything yet. We don't owe anyone an explanation until we're ready." He smiled at that, relieved. Maybe even proud. Before I got out of the truck, he reached over and touched my hand. Not like he did that night in the dark. But fully. Firmly. In daylight. With eyes open. The weeks that followed were complicated. I went back to college. Tried to settle into classes and late-night study groups, pretending everything was the same. It wasn't. He texted me every night. Sometimes just a "you okay?" Other times long messages about what he'd cooked for dinner, or how he finally fixed the leaky pipe under his sink. I saved every one of them. When we FaceTimed, he looked lighter. Less burdened. Like finally naming the thing between us had peeled off layers of armor he didn't need anymore. But the real shift happened over Thanksgiving. When the family gathered around the table, laughter filling the room, eyes darting from one seat to the next, he sat beside me. Close. Comfortable. No fear in his body language. At one point, my mother looked over and said, "You two have gotten close lately." Darren smiled. "Yeah. He gets me in ways no one else does." It wasn't a confession. But it wasn't a lie either. I held my breath, waiting for a reaction. But she just nodded. "I'm glad he has someone who listens." Later that night, as everyone dozed off full of turkey and wine, he and I stood by the back porch. The moonlight spilled across the yard like a memory waiting to be written. "I keep thinking about the cabin," I told him. He nodded. "Me too. You were the first person who ever held my hand and made me feel like it meant something. You were the first person I ever let in," he said. We didn't need to say more. We just stood there, side by side, letting the night remind us how far we'd come from that stormy evening with the flickering candle and too much silence. Months passed. We didn't see each other every week. We didn't post pictures. We didn't even call it anything. But we kept showing up, for birthdays, for long weekends, for late-night drives to nowhere. And slowly, without needing to define it, we became something real. There was love there. Not the kind that fits neatly into a box. Not the kind that people always understand. But the kind that builds slowly, hand over hand, breath over breath, until one day you realize it's the most honest thing you've ever known. One spring afternoon, we returned to the cabin. Power restored. Trees blooming. The storm now just a memory. We sat on the same couch, under the same roof where it all began. He looked at me, his hand resting on my thigh. "You remember what I said back then?" he asked. "That you didn't know what to do next?" He nodded. "I still don't." I smiled. "That's okay. Neither do I. But I do know this," he added. "I'm not afraid of wanting something good anymore. Even if it's not perfect. Even if it scares me." He reached for my hand again. This time, I met him halfway. Some hands hold you once and vanish. Some hands hold you so tight, they leave marks. But the rarest hands, the ones that matter, are the ones that trembled when they first touched yours, and still came back anyway. Do you think love has to follow rules, or just truth? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Because sometimes, the scariest hands to hold, are the ones that feel the most like home.